Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome to another Around Cranberry Township interview. I'm Dr. Bulow with Revive Upper Cervical Chiropractic, and today I'm chatting with Kirsten McCourt of the McCort Baker Group. Say hey, Kirsten.
Hey, how's it going?
So I've gotten to know Kiersten, I don't know, the last couple of years at least, something like that, in our
probably 3 or 4
our breakfast meeting. Yeah, we get together on a weekly basis in Cranberry. There's a breakfast group of business professionals where we just learn from one another and share information. And it's been a pleasure for me to get to know Kiersten and hear about all the wonderful things that she's doing in the financial world. But for those of you that, folks that don't know you, Kiersten, if you want to take a couple minutes, just introduce yourself and what it is that you do.
Sure. So my name's Kirsten McCourt. I'm a financial advisor with Ameriprise. I have been for 20 years. I'm in my 20th year somehow already.
That's awesome. Congratulations.
Yeah, time flies.
That's right.
When you're financial planning.
That's right.
Anyhow, I've been having a practice here for 20 years. I'm a former manager for the company and opened my own personal practice here in the Brooktree office about 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So been helping clients work towards their goals. Anything involving budgeting, student loans, saving for college, creating cash reserves, retirement, helping with estates, inheritances.
All the stuff I never talked about with my family over the Thanksgiving table. You know what I mean? It's like,
yes.
You would think we should learn this stuff like in school.
I wish we
or
would.
have conversations.
Yes.
But it seems like, what is it about finances that it's kind of like, I like to, since I'm in healthcare, it's kind of similar. Like there's certain topics that you're kind of just not allowed to talk about with someone that isn't your spouse. You know what I mean? It's kind of like put over here, like, oh, we just don't talk about that. You know?
Right.
What is that culturally? Where do you think that comes from?
I think it becomes, I think it's personal. Yeah. And sometimes people are not really sure that what they're doing is right, so they don't want to say anything and maybe sound like they don't know what they're talking about.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I found that to be the case when clients come and talk to me, that they feel like they'll throw in things like, yeah, it's probably not the right thing to do, or I probably made a stupid decision. And I always say, there is no stupid decision necessarily. Yeah. You've done what you've done, and sometimes it's not such a big deal, and sometimes there's things that we can do to improve it. Yeah. That's all.
Crazy. Now, going back to your story, I'm kind of curious. Did you grow up in this area? You grew up around here?
No, I grew up in a small crabbing town outside of Baltimore, actually.
No way!
I did, yes.
It's a pretty town, though. Baltimore, as much as we don't like the Ravens.
Right.
Baltimore's, aside from that...
It was so long ago, they were the Colts, so...
Wow, that's right,
yeah, it's been a minute. So, I grew up there, but I did graduate high school from North Allegheny.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
And, and then I went to school at Auburn, which you're very well aware. I scream it a lot.
This is true. She's a pretty raving fan there.
Lunatic with it. So I grew up here, but then my practice has always been in the Pittsburgh area. I started out in the Monroeville office.
Okay.
And then I managed the South Hills, it's really Bethel Park office. And also there was an office on McKnight Road up in the North Hills.
Gotcha.
So I managed both of those. And then after that, that's when I opened
And
this
did you
office.
go to school, when you went to Auburn, did you go to school for finances and
economics? I have an economics degree.
Got it. And what got you into that? I've been doing a lot of Myers-Briggs personality type studying. Because
I'm an ISTJ.
You're an ISTJ, gotcha.
You wouldn't think it, but that's what I came up as.
That's very cool. And if I knew it more, I know it's introvert, sensate, thinker, and judger. And I think you may be a T and a J. I think that's my wife's brain type, actually. And she keeps me very well organized because I'm an EN. FP, I think.
Oh, we're on the other side.
That's wild.
I should probably take it this decade. It's probably changed.
It's a fascinating thing. But ISTJs are very organized, right? Like super organized.
As you
everything
can tell.
has a place. Everything right. Her desk is on the other side.
Yeah.
But what was it in terms of this industry? Was there something that gravitated you towards it initially?
Yeah, I went to school actually for marine biology, which I think we had talked about a little bit. So I always had a fascination with biology, marine life in particular, growing up on the bay.
Gotcha.
But I enjoy the order and process of science and biology.
Phylum, genus, and species.
I liked it. I loved it, actually. And but I always kind of knew I was not going to do that as a career. I didn't really enjoy the professions that I could get into with it, and I didn't really want to be working in a college atmosphere or teaching. Sure. but I did like the idea of learning and education.
Yeah.
So for me, when I went into school, I always minored in econ, and I switched my junior year because I loved the idea of putting out. I loved the graphing, and I loved the very basis of opportunity cost resonated with me.
Define that.
So opportunity cost is just that, whenever you're making a decision, the opportunity cost is what are all the factors that go into it.
Yeah.
So what are you missing out on?
Yeah.
You've made this decision, but what's the opportunity cost that you've lost otherwise?
So the $5 today on Starbucks could be $500 if it was invested properly down the road.
Yeah.
It's kind of a crazy thing.
It's kind of the interesting thing. But I had always thought in terms of that.
Yeah.
That was always in my mentality growing up, and I think that was my parents.
Yeah.
My dad would take me to work meetings that he had, and I would sit there and listen to what he would do.
Yeah.
So I always kind of knew I'd go into business.
Sure.
And I like this field because financial planning is sort of an art and a science, meaning that we're doing very technical work. Mm-hmm. There's analysis that goes into how much needs saved, inflation, correct, inflation rates of return, what kind of alphas and betas you're getting into the technical stuff. Mm-hmm. But that if you talk to 5 planners, they might give you 5 different answers.
Yeah, different philosophies of it.
Yeah. It doesn't mean they're wrong. They're just different.
Yeah.
So I like the idea of being able to present options to clients when they tell me that, hey, this is what I'm trying to achieve, or this is a problem that I have.
What's your most common, or what's your ideal sort of scenario? Like, I think, again, there are parallels to finances and health and other things. And like in healthcare, we could help a lot of people optimize, but then there's a certain subset of folks, whether it's concussion or migraine, that are like, oh man, yeah, we can totally rock your world and do good things. For you, what's that group? Like, what's the folks that like, they come to you and you're like, oh man, we're going to radically improve this person's life. This is going to be awesome. I can't wait to get started. Like, who's that? Who's that group for you?
Well, first of all, it comes with a mentality. Anybody who is open, right? So somebody who's open to learning what you're saying.
Yeah.
And wants to understand what the options are. It doesn't really matter the problem.
Yeah.
But, I've been in situations where I thought, well, this is really great, because they might say, I just have a lot of liabilities. I have a lot of expenses. I have a family. I have X amount of money coming in. I have X amount going out. How in the world do I save it, or how do I prioritize it? Mm-hmm. And I've had very great success with being able to restructure people's cash flow so that we could free up money, find ways to free up money, and then get them to save. So I've had really large swings with that. Just in people kind of in the beginning phase. Yeah. But then I've also had really great options with people as far as family planning, where sometimes I can think of a client in particular where she and I were going kind of round and round after she retired about how do we want to do it. And I presented a few different options, and she would always come back with, I'm not really sure if that's how I want it. That's how I want it. And, but it ended up being good, and it lasted her through her retirement. And now we're on to that same legacy going on to her great nieces and nephews.
That's cool. That's
20 years later, because that happened 20 years ago. So it's as long as they're open to understanding what's out there.
I learned that a few years back, and I've been in practice about 10 years, and I remember it dawned on me like 3-4 years ago, and we would, as chiropractors, we would go, I don't do them as much anymore, but we would go and do screenings, like you may have a booth at a trade show or something like that. And the idea is you're screening folks to see if they would be good candidates for care. Like getting your blood pressure checked or your cholesterol checked, and you could probably do that based on someone's P&L and different things, I'm guessing.
Sure.
But what I realized was what we really we're doing, we're screening someone's mentality. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Because you could have screaming migraines and be totally happy taking Tylenol for the rest of your life. Right. I'm sure in your world, someone could have screaming debt and totally be like, no, I don't, have like, oh, it's just going to go away on its own.
That's the American dream, and I'm keeping living it.
Yeah, exactly, right?
Right.
So what are some of for people who say, well, I'm not like that. I don't want to be ignorant to my situation financially. Yeah. What are some blind spots that would help them in the right path, or some practical things that they can start to do, short of obviously connecting with you? What are some first steps for people that are like, well, yeah, it's not like I'm dead broke, but I'm certainly not rich. I'm somewhere in the middle. I'm paying my bills. You know what I mean? But I really don't have a retirement plan. Obviously, we got to talk to Kiersten. But like, what are some things that they should be looking at? Like some big red flags. Like you got to stop doing that right away. Or big easy goalposts of like you could at least start doing this. You know, I'm just kind of curious what your advice would be.
I mean, some easy ways and especially with the computers now, you could go to the McCortBaker.com on the website. There's tons of calculators out there. Or you could go to any of the financial institutions. They all have calculators on the website. But I would say a good starting point is typically just starting at looking at what your budget is. One of the first things we do is take a look at what is the client's budget to see what amount of money is going out versus what is coming in. And we look at the ratios. Are they within a reasonable debt to income relation? Do you have good debt? Might be, your house. You can deduct the interest on your mortgage. You might have bad debt, credit cards, car loans, things like that. Housing is always going to be
bad debt being that it's high interest, or you just
it's
can't write it off.
It's interest that you can't write off, and it's high. Yeah, I mean, certainly credit card's going to be high. I just started looking at cars; some of those are jumping up. But the idea is that you start to look to see where do you fall in the parameters of how are you overspending or are you not? And if you're saving, what should you be doing?
So credit cards don't count as income.
It turns out they don't.
It's
Loans, line of credit, and credit cards are not income.
I thought that was good.
You did not just get $30,000.
I get so many of those letters. Like, hey, here's your business loan.
It's free at 0%. It's all yours. Not quite.
No free lunch.
It turns out at some point they want that back.
Right. So I know we have somewhat limited time. I have a couple more questions for you. Before I do, let me just tell folks that a couple things. I always forget to do this till the very end.
Okay.
But I want to tell you right now, before we continue and wrap up, and a couple more questions for Kiersten, please, if you have any questions, ask them, right? If you're there and you're watching this video, fire away some questions. I'm sure Kiersten can keep tabs on this video and conversations and can connect with you personally. And share it. I mean, you just don't know who may be lost, who may be in that position where they've graduated, they got the job, but they have no plan, or maybe they just recently retired and they need to start setting that plan up for their family. But anybody who's got any concerns or questions around finances might be in your life and you just don't know it. Like these are sometimes personal, especially this topic. Some people wear it close to their heart and you might not even know about it, but if you share it, it may make a difference in their life. And that's pretty important stuff. But otherwise, please ask any questions. So a couple of more questions for you, Kiersten. I always like to ask folks, so first of all, what got you into it, which you kind of explained there, but like, what keeps you in it? What keeps you coming back? Why do you like doing it? What's the kind of emotional drive? Because running your own business and being a part of a business, is not easy. It's not easy, And
there's a lot of headaches.
Yeah. And so
turns out people don't give you businesses either.
And you're an introvert and you're working with people.
Go figure.
So how does that? So there's got to be a payoff for you. Other than obviously income and things like that, there's got to be an emotional thing that you get a satisfaction out of. I'm just kind of curious what that is for you.
Well, yeah, you're right. I mean, there's the perks and the drawbacks to owning a business. It's great to be your own boss and to dictate what you want to do and take the direction you want to take. Yeah. But there's a lot of problems that go with owning a business. Yeah. But what keeps you day to day is what I do on a daily basis is talk to clients. It's cool for me for instance, I just got thank you cards. When you get the thank you card in the mail that says, hey, really, really appreciate it. We couldn't have got through this tough time without you. Yeah. Or, hey, I really appreciate it. Your help this year. I knitted you a scarf. Or, so it's not, I mean it for the presents. Please send me presents.
That's right. Gifts are welcome.
But the point is that you get to see on a daily basis how you have impacted people. Yeah. So you say, what are some of the biggest things? When I had a client who I think we've become good friends, who was on the phone crying, saying, I can't believe I'm finally in this position. This was really, really tough situation for me and my family. Yeah. We couldn't have done it without you fighting for us, and we appreciate it. So those are the kind of things that keeps you kind of motivated on a day-to-day basis, where you say, I think people have a certain perception of who an advisor is or what that is. The idea is that you're connecting with them on a personal level, and people think of I think Wall Street or like Gordon Gekko or whoever. Yeah. Really, that's not the case. I help people with small amounts of money up to people that have really large estates.
Sure.
The idea is if you can do something that will impact their actual lifestyle or help them in a way to achieve the things that they had set up for them and their family, that's when it's fun.
That's cool. That's cool.
Yeah.
George is joining us. Hey, George. Thanks for joining us. George always joins us. He's a great friend and fellow business owner out of Zelienople.
Okay.
Cool. So shout out to George. Now, my eyes are terrible, so I'm going to lean in. George says, Kiersten,
yes.
What's more important, finding a way to make more money for better cash flow, or finding ways to reduce the amount of money you are spending? Which side of the scale should be?
Is the glass half full or half empty? What came first, the chicken or the egg? Right? Okay, so what is the better way to make more money for better cash? I would say that the first step is to look at your cash flow to see what are you spending. If you are spending too much, it's tough to make the cash flow work.
So looking at the expenditures.
Looking at the expenditures, I think, would be the first thing.
Kind of controlling that.
Yeah, so kind of a rule of thumb of what you're looking at is, I think ultimately what you're asking is, how does my net worth start to build back up?
Yeah.
Am I growing my money more, or am I reducing what I owe? Because a net worth is assets minus liabilities.
Gotcha.
What do I owe versus what do I own?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so our rule of thumb when we're working with clients and we try to figure out sort of a basis point, sort of a report card, if you will, George, is we try to hope that a person's net worth is increasing by 10% a year. So how do you do that? It is by earning more money, saving more money, and reducing what your payments going out are, reducing what your liabilities are. But I would say the easiest way to do that, especially when we're talking from a cash flow, not an investment standpoint, is reducing the expenses or figuring out how do you have any liabilities and how do I get them down to a lower percentage rate, or how do I get them paid? What is the payment schedule? Because I will say this, so to kind of answer one of your questions, I have lots of clients that will come in, and generally they have many things that they owe on, right? You owe on a car, you owe on a house, which is given, generally speaking, but they usually have more than one card. They might have scatterings on a few, 2 to 3 different credit cards, etc. And oftentimes what I find is people make payments. I'll put an extra $20, extra $50, an extra $100 on this one or this one or this one. It makes a lot more sense to really figure out, first, how do we get that to be at a lower rate? Creditcards.com is a website, for instance, that you can go to and look at, here's my balance. I want to look at balance transfers at 0% with no fee.
Yeah.
They have them on there per your credit card, per your credit score.
Sure.
So we're looking from that way. But then also what I find is when people spread those extra payments out, you're not really attacking one problem. The issue is you're just consistently paying a little bit extra, and they all just kind of keep compounding.
Yeah, the minimum payment kills you.
That's
exactly. It just kills you.
That's exactly what happens. Yeah. I'll do minimum payment plus $50.
Yeah.
But I'll do it on all of them. And none of them ever get paid. And you might have a small little balance that's maybe $2,000, but it lasts for that $2,000. By the time you're done paying it,
you paid
$8,000. Yeah. I mean, depending. So
it's sad. It's depressing when you look at it.
It's terribly depressing. Yeah. So, and it's usually better to just attack a game plan where we can figure out what's going to be the fastest way to pay it. What do we attack first, and how do we get that down to a lower rate? So expenditure, I think that was a really long answer to your question, George.
And I think it's kind of like the ghost in the closet. Like, none of us want to look at it. Like, I didn't look at my student loans for I don't know how long.
Sure.
You know what I mean? It's just like...
It's the boogeyman.
Income-based deferment is just over there. You know,
I don't know.
Just see no evil.
Yeah, right.
And I think it's probably good to have people like yourself and others that can be your shield. Be like, you look.
Somebody's got to handle it.
But it is something that probably is just, you have to assess the situation and address it. Because that's something you can control. One thing I always, I'm a big fan, this time of year, we're doing this in November, and I'm a huge fan of goal setting. And like I said, the Myers-Briggs and goal setting and like strategizing and all that. And it's so interesting. Like, we'll set up goals for outcomes. Like, I want to make X amount, I want to weigh this amount, I want to do whatever. And then it's almost like we wait by a certain date, you know what I mean, by a certain date.
Right.
And then we get to that date and we're like, do we reach our goal? And if we reached it, hey, we're happy. And if we didn't reach it, oh, we're sad.
Right.
But it's like you really had no control over that outcome. What you do have control over is, my goal is to go to the gym 5 days a week. My goal is to, like, what can I actually do that will yield to that outcome? So in this question, it's kind of interesting because it's like, out of those two, the assessment and elimination or control of the debt is something I can actually do.
Right.
And then I can work on things that would get me more money on the income, but that may, depending on the vehicles, be harder. You know what I mean? Because I might have to, whether it's a second job or, and I don't know, maybe George has some different ideas on how to grow that end of the pie, you know? But I'm just thinking practically is like, that's something I can control right now. I could look at it and attack it and then work on how am I going to better my financial situation on the income side. You know, I don't know if that's just the way I would think of the two things.
I actually think you just summarized that perfectly, because what you're ultimately looking at is the game plan. Because when you're working with an advisor, one of the first things that you're really talking about, I think a lot of people are like, well, I don't want to go and say what I've got going on, or I'm not sure. One of the first things you're going to talk about are, what are your goals?
Yeah.
And what was that? I think it was an old Harvard study that was done. I mean, this was probably 10, 15 years ago, that, you know, you have like a 90% more success rate if you actually clearly define and write down your goals. Yeah. So my job is to help work with people to define what it is that they're seeking. Yeah. And then we look at, okay, here's my assessment. Here's where I stand right now. What is the game plan to take the steps I need? And not everybody's in debt. I work with plenty of people that aren't in debt, or that have that already have a pretty good set of things going. We might be doing more different things like tax strategies, or how do we get non-taxable income out? How do we save money that way? So the idea is to always look at, how do we make your machine the most efficient, because you have a written end game in mind, rather than saying, yeah, I'd just like to be in a better spot, or I wish I had more money. I'd like to have more money. You know, I wish I had money at the end of the month. Okay, cool. So do we all. Who doesn't? But what specifically do we need to have happen? And then how do you track it? The point is, when you work with the planner, we track that at least every 6 months. Gotcha. So that we're touching base and saying, all right, you tell me what's changed in your life. Job change, had a baby, got a promotion, lost a job, you know, whatever the case is. And then my function is to say, okay, this is what's changing. Insurance has changed. Tax rates have changed. This is what's going on. I don't know if you've noticed, but the economy's kind of going around. So you start talking about the things and how you can take advantage of the bumps, the highs and the lows, to work towards your situation better.
I love it. I mean, just coming to my mind is like, it's like anything else in life. There are professionals for different categories of your life. And it's like, if we just work with professionals, whether it's in healthcare or financial care or other forms of care, it's like, man, things just go so much better, and you can have an accountability partner there, and you can grow and develop in that area of your life. This has been motivating for me, Kiersten. My last thing I always ask is just how can people connect with you, number one? And then just any last words that you want to share with the community.
So people can always go to our website, McCourtBaker.com. You can email me directly from there. My phone number is 724-799-8512. I'm at my desk often, so you could reach me there too. So I would just like to say thanks for watching. And if you do have any other questions, or if this sparks any areas of interest for you, go check out the website, or email me, or give me a call. We always are happy to meet with people. I meet with people on a complimentary basis initially. And sometimes I work with them complimentary also moving forward. Just depends on the situation. So I'm happy to help. Hope you guys all have a great holiday season. And this was fun. This was different.
Thanks for hanging out.
Very cool idea. Leave it to you to have some cool idea for this.
I try.
You're pretty good at it. Yeah.
Well, hey guys, thanks again, as Kiersten said. And excuse me. We'll see you next week. Bye now.